Already on the phone. Yes, let's go.
All right, let's go ahead and start. We know some extra people will join. A couple of quick announcements. I'll stall for you, Rob, to give a couple people a little bit more time to join. Thank you for joining us for this Texas Smart Cities series talk. We've had good attendance at these by really sharp people. These are going to be used to help us formulate projects coming out of the pandemic. And in fact, we presented the first 6 projects that Austin Smart City Alliance will pursue coming out of the pandemic at our last members meeting. And this is one. And the reason this one is so important, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this project is essentially the reason I created Austin City Up years ago. I went to Smart City conferences. I talked to people doing Smart City projects, individual projects in cities around the world. And I realized all these projects were disconnected even when they were in the same city. And none of these cities had a smart city architecture. So none of them had a platform by which they could ingest mobility data and housing data and health data and sustainability data and energy data and affordability data and all of this other kinds of data, such that they could do more comprehensive analytics work. And so that was really a motivating factor in the creation of Austin City Up, now Austin Smart City Alliance. And so we are super fortunate to have Data.World as a member of this. And Data.World has a platform that is, you know, at first blush, the answer to what I'd hoped for Austin City Up long ago, and to have Dell Technologies as a partner in it, and people like Rob Silverberg, who is a CTO for digital cities in Dell Technologies. So with that, let me turn it over to Rob Silverberg of Dell Technologies and Brian Jacob of Data.World.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jay. Hi, everyone. Rob Silverberg, Dell Technologies. Part of our state and local government strategy team, and I'm our Smart Cities lead for North America for Dell Technologies. Brian, you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I'm Brian Jacob. I'm the CTO, one of the co-founders for Data.World.
And another collaborator in this project was Steve Steinberg. Steve, do a quick intro. If you would.
I'm Steve Steinberg, and the CEO of Responsum, a conversational AI solution that we're going to talk about here in concert with the data architecture.
All righty. So where this started was looking at smart city data requirements and how we might create a data architecture that would meet those core requirements. The team came together, initial discussions with Brian and myself about what we believed that smart cities would need from a data architecture. We then brought in the Dell Boomi team and their expertise around data integration. We also brought in Steve Steinberg from Responsum around how to leverage data through chatbots and automated response systems. So essentially the core, I would say, element of our discussion was around data-driven cities. So smart cities are data-driven cities. They leverage data for gaining new insights, better decision-making, optimizing city services. We propose that a smart city data architecture must be able to handle several different data use cases. Now, the data use cases are very broad, and we could go through probably a list of 50 of them, but we wanted to highlight some of the key things that we were considering as we put this architecture together. That in most smart city use cases, you've got connected devices, you've got data coming from applications. I added applications to this because we worked on 311 data, application sensors and connected devices. And these real-time data feeds should be leveraged for dashboards and alerts to provide the city with actionable situational awareness. So as you have these sensors out in the field, maybe you're doing traffic monitoring and you're counting traffic, and you're also having the AI at the edge looking for traffic incidents or accidents or those sorts of things, you want to be able to then have those power the dashboards and alerts for understanding what's happening now. But also these sensors, these applications are aggregating data over time. So as you start to look at data over time, again, using a traffic data example, we should be able to understand what are the typical traffic patterns for a certain intersection in the city over time. Then we can leverage predictive models and anomaly detection to say, typically, this afternoon or at 2 in the morning, there's very little traffic at this intersection. Now at 2 in the morning, for some reason, there's a huge amount of traffic that could be flagged as an anomaly. And then aggregated data should also be made available to data scientists to develop some of these constructs. So step one is sort of dashboards and alerts. Step two is more data insights, leveraging machine learning tools, leveraging data science to better understand what the data is telling us. Two other things that I added in terms of the team that we worked on this with, data from disparate systems may be integrated for a system of systems approach. This is a core element of what Dell Boomi does in terms of bringing data from system A to trigger data in system B and bringing these things together. And then, of course, in working with Responsum, we looked at the ability for data to be accessed through AI tools such as chatbots and automated response systems. So these are sort of the core elements of our thinking and how we came up with an architecture model and then actually an architecture implementation. So I see a question in the chat here. Let me click on that. Anonymizing data as well. Agreed with that. Anonymizing data is very important. So you can eliminate personally identifiable information. And part of that falls actually into governance and data governance, which is what we talked about quite a bit. So in looking at some of these key requirements, and then let me pause to see if there's any questions or comments on this. Brian, you want to add anything to this?
No, I think I actually, yeah, no, I was going to say, I think most of my comments are going to be on the next slide, which you just advanced to, and I think it's it's related to the comment from Rolly in the chat that it's a great insight. You need a process for anonymizing, for aggregating, for really kind of how do we responsibly use data in various contexts. And so that's really central to this idea, to the ideas behind this architecture, is that you want to be able to collect data from many different sources. The source of data isn't just city government, but there's many sources, public and private, that have data that can be used to address problems at the city level. On the right-hand side, the green boxes are the various applications and use cases that Rob was alluding to. What we've been thinking through here in terms of the architecture is how do we connect those dots? How do we make those connections from the sources of data to the applications that can use them to achieve objectives for the residents of the city in a way that gives the owners and the stewards of that data the ability to retain control, to be able to be compliant with the legal, ethical use and disbursement of that data, while still allowing it to be used for various applications. Starts with things like dashboarding, where you're looking for high-level overviews, which is a lot of the demo we're going to show today. But if you get down into things like chatbots and natural language systems that Steve's going to talk about, you actually, to build a chatbot, you need to be able to train it on the raw data, which will include personally identifiable information. That's okay. It's not that data can't be used for that. It's that it needs to be responsibly managed, and the custody needs to be handled through that process. So that's really the goal of this architecture, is to allow folks to bring data to bear into a marketplace, have it understood and discoverable, so that it can then be brought to bear on various applications.
Yeah, let me add to that a little bit. So if you think about sort of the data contributor on the left-hand side and the private data repository, this is already in place throughout the city of Austin. You have different data sources going into different databases, and most of them are siloed, and they're not thought of in terms of an overall data strategy. So if you take just the green boxes on the left, the blue boxes on the left, this is the way it exists today. You've got data going into the data repository. What we're proposing is we're going to add some of these things to the right that do not exist today in the city of Austin and many cities across the country. You've got the need for data standards, collaborative curation and governance to decide what should be pulled from those private data repositories and integrated either into an open data repository, the open data tools that many cities have, how to make sure that that works, and then an internal shared data repository that was not necessarily open to the public, but should be made available to other agencies within the city, so that the data can be then leveraged and integrated and better utilized. And then the use cases on the right-hand side are really where cities should be going toward, the ability to leverage data more effectively, whether that's direct data access for reporting or analysis or dashboards and alerts, or in some cases, the chatbots and applications that can provide data insights. So really, the left exists, the right does not, and this is where we believe we can add value. Pause for questions or comments.
Just note, Bill posted a comment in the chat saying, I don't see, county, state, public organizations, business organizations on this page. You do, but not by that name. I think, the idea is that, the data contributors down the left-hand side and the consumers of the data products and applications down the right-hand side cut across all of those organizations. So all of those organizations are actors and participants in this.
Agreed. And a data contributor could be an application, it could be a sensor, it could be anything that's within the city environment, or even external data that is coming into the city. So I think that this slide is worth, I don't know, a lot in terms of how cities should be thinking about data, how they should be approaching data. And this slide itself, I think, is a key part of our strategy here. So moving forward, we decided to create a demonstration of how a data architecture would work. We looked around for what sort of data is available that we could leverage that could showcase the value of this sort of a data architecture. We came across the Austin 311 data feed, and we liked it because it had both aspects that we were looking for, and it was available to us to use. It had near real time as cases are opened and closed in near real time. It had APIs that allow us to get a feed for that data. And then it also had data over time. So we could look at data for the last month or 2 months or 6 months or years to do some of that data science work. So the aspects of the 311 data had both aspects. And what we did is we worked with the Data.World team and the Dell Boomi team to integrate the data and create the dashboard. Now, dashboards themselves are not very exciting. Everyone can create a dashboard, but it's that data architecture that powers the dashboard that we believe is more valuable than the dashboard itself. So this is essentially where we were. If you were to add another box on the right-hand side, we actually talked with Responsum about how that data would be then leveraged for AI and question asking of the data. Like, what is happening with my request to have graffiti removed on the sidewalk out in front of my house? That could be something that Responsum could power as well. So what it looks like is from the Data.World side, I'm going to let Brian talk to this. They integrated the data feed from Austin 311. And Brian, do you want to talk a bit about how that was done?
Sure. So this is just a screenshot from the Data.World data set that we use to integrate and source the data from Austin 311. You can see some basic metadata down the right-hand side, talking about the size, the where this data has been shared, a link to the data dictionary that kind of talks through the columns in the data set. You see a related project there for the Austin 311 queries. We're going to look at that in a second. That's kind of where we took this data and reshaped it to feed into the dashboard. And you see a bit of an activity feed there, recent updates where I and some other systems had updated this data. But basically, this is the landing page within that commons for the Austin 311 data, highlighting what data is there, showing metadata and giving you kind of a preview of the data. And then if you go to the next slide, this is again just a screenshot from within that workbench, where one of the things we wanted to demonstrate on the dashboard was a breakdown of the requests by the council district. And so here, this is a query that was written and saved. You can kind of see it in the list on the left-hand side, the list down through of a number of queries. Each of those queries is something that was written to slice this data, to model it, to make it ready to show in the dashboard that we're going to look at in a couple slides as we go through the Boomi segment of the presentation.
So this is essentially the dashboard that was created using one of the tools in the Boomi toolset called Boomi Flow. It is a data workflow tool and data visualization tool, essentially pulling the data from Data.World and putting it into both a tabular dashboard as well as a graphical dashboard. So similar to how you might use Microsoft Power BI or how you might use Tableau, this is a way to create visualizations of your data but it also has the extended capabilities of data integration, data aggregation, and the ability to create visualizations. So this is what we created as a sample of what you can do with data for that first stage of our data architecture, which is dashboards and visualizations. Here we can see in the left-hand side, we have a lot more closed data than we have open. We can adjust this and remove the closed so we can see sort of what's open currently. We have looking at, oops, hold on, there we go. Looking at number of requests by day, we definitely had a peak in terms of number of requests on 3/13. Wonder why there was a peak, but something we could do further analysis on to determine. Then you've got the different districts around Austin who's creating more requests. Clearly District 9 is doing a lot more requests for service than say District 6. Why is that? What insights can we gain from that? That's where the data science work and the machine learning can help us as well. And then looking at the way these requests come in, we've got most of them coming in by phone, from the Spot 311 interface, some of them through the web. So we can look at how people are reporting these and maybe how that's evolving over time. Is the number of Spot 311 interfaces increasing or decreasing? Are we going to have a less need for phone response going forward because more will be moving online? These are the kind of insights that we can potentially deliver leveraging data. Any comments or questions that I should address? Quickly looking at the chat here.
I don't think
All right, that works. All right, cool. Let's keep moving forward. So again, data architecture and data visualization as a demonstration of the architecture. A little bit more on Boomi, because this is a key tool set that we believe can be a core component along with Data.World of how you would integrate data across a city landscape. So you've got essentially a data integration tool, potential use cases for both cloud-based data repositories such as Data.World or on-prem apps as well. So Boomi being a core component of this. One of the other use cases that we talked about for leveraging Boomi is the ability for 311 data to be integrated with the departmental applications. So for example, today, a request comes in for graffiti removal, and that gets sent out to a certain department. It goes into a work order system in that department, but it's manually entered. So someone's actually keying it in. And then when it's closed out in that line of business application, someone then manually goes back and keys it into the 311 app saying it's closed. Well, that's an integration that could very easily be done using Boomi. So as soon as the request comes in, the line of business application gets triggered, the work order gets created. As soon as the work order is completed, that triggers a Boomi transaction to go back to the 311 system, automatically closing out that work order or that request. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Steinberg to talk a bit about Responsum and how Responsum can potentially make data available to the public and answer key questions without overburdening city staff. So Steve, you want to take over?
Sure, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, some of you have likely seen this before as far as Responsum and what we're able to do to automate communication with residents and staff. I was going to specifically talk today more about the type of use cases that Rob was referencing and how to use actual data within the city to automate that communication amongst staff and make it easy to not only be able to access it through dashboards and reports like we showed here, but also to be able to make it accessible through just asking what district has the most 311 requests this month, or what are the issues that we're having today, and get real-time access to that info that supplements more detailed dashboard type reporting. So thanks, Rob. The challenge is, being the fragmentation of the data. It's across all the different data silos like that architecture diagram showed. And so there can also be a step forward in being able to access information quickly, where even if it's still in the data silos, we can make it presentable through an automated chat, even where it lives now. But ideally, you are going to develop the architecture that was designed here and make it much more accessible and easy and cleaner to be able to get the correct information. So it's also making it the solution is a no-code platform to basically chat with the information directly. So it could be citizens asking for information about their 311 requests. It could be staff going through Microsoft Teams, which I know the city of Austin uses, to actually get this information by chatting with a Teams automated agent. So you can go to the next one, Rob. So the goal here is to improve the resident experience, making this data easy, answering questions faster, and learning from all of the questions that come in, and making the system actually smarter over time, so that all of the questions that people are asking the city and all of the things internally are functioning more smoothly and efficiently, because you're capturing the knowledge of the collective team. And you're assisting staff so that if there's turnover and new people are coming into new jobs or they're changing jobs, you're able to make this information very accessible and easy to access through a conversational interface. So for us, how we work is basically through API integrations to these various systems or databases to use natural language to be able to talk to the systems directly, get back answers using secure API connectivity. And with Boomi in there, we're able to connect, and Data.World, we're able to connect to the endpoints and easily create APIs that can then allow our natural language models to communicate with them. And the other step here is the knowledge that we can train this on. So unstructured data as well as structured data is key. So a lot of what we're showing here, the data architecture, is around structured data, but documents and things are also valuable, and that there's a lot of answers and intelligence in those documents. So how do we bring that together in a way that you can ask questions from either at the same time? And then finally, the key with AI is to be able to train models and to have enough data to actually make determinations based upon that data, take action, notify people of certain things that are occurring. And so we're able to, we already have pre-trained models around 311 requests and understanding what people say when they make certain types of requests. Language around airports, working with Houston airports, around traveler engagement, working with COVID-19 data. So the key on the data science is really getting that data in a format that can that you can learn from, and then also learning from the conversations that occur against that data, and understanding how different people ask for different data points and how they communicate with the systems. So we're able to train those models quickly.
Thank you, Steve. I'm actually going to go back to this architecture because I had a few more things I wanted to talk about here. So moving backwards, there we go. So looking at this slide again, this is the value add that we are going to try to bring to certain departments in the city. Because we worked on the 311 data set, our next task is to go to that 311 team at the city. And Jay, I know you know who those are and can help get us connected there, and talk about the data architecture and what we can do with it, show them the dashboard, and get some feedback from them on how they might want to work on some sort of a proof of concept or project around the data architecture, leveraging the 311 data. One other thing I wanted to say about this slide is that I know we have our partner NTT on the line. I think AJ, I saw you out there. This right-hand side of the picture is something that the NTT team have also put together in their smart platform approach. So depending on the use case, depending on the tool, depending on the sensor, we could potentially integrate the NTT smart platform into the solution. I believe NTT is currently working with the Austin Department of Transportation on a traffic monitoring pilot project that's going to generate some data that we hope to leverage using this architecture as well, and leveraging the NTT smart platform on the right-hand side of this picture as well. So just wanted to call out the other partner that we're working with here in Austin. So that's what we had for today. I'm going to stop the share here and go to the chat and see what we've got there. Looks like some good dialogue. So I guess any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas around smart city data architecture, maybe something we missed. Obviously, there's a lot we could add to this, security, anonymizing data, access controls, things that obviously would need to be added as we move this forward. But this is, again, a first step down the road of smart city data.
Yeah, I like the comments in the chat about anonymization. And of course, for anything about a smart city data architecture, how it's going to be secured and privacy. I know you all aren't taking it for granted by not mentioning it, but anything we put in front of any government source is going to need to see that first, middle, and last just to be reassured. So we should probably just spell that out, even though I know that, you know, there's zero chance Dell, Boomi, and Data.World are not thinking about that, but we need to make sure that it's spelled out so that anyone who sees us jumping into the vision of what it can enable knows that those are fundamental principles in it.
What was it that you wanted to add, Jay? I missed that we need to add something.
The explicit principles of privacy and how anonymization will be used and at different levels of what data will be made available. Brian has some of it in his, it's sort of at a very high level mentioned in that diagram slide that he had. But I just think that as we present this architecture, we'll need to state it up front. I mean, Rob, you know full well, living in California, you saw the second people on the facial data analytics, San Francisco said, oh, we're banning that. They weren't even implementing it, but said they were banned. And there's just so much concern about some of these things that we probably have to say it, probably have to almost say it right at the beginning. Before we get into this architecture, let us assure you that, you know, data security and individual privacy are paramount.
Yeah, it's a really great point. I mean, it's you know, it's kind of like a key part of the the talking track around this, because that's exactly what happens today, is because there is kind of this fear about, you know, this real and valid fear about sharing things outside of compliance or in an unethical manner. The default position is don't share anything ever, introduce red tape, right? So many of these, you know, these things you said, you know, City of San Francisco completely just shut down their process and didn't move forward. Like that's a fairly common story. Like
right.
It's key to this, and you're absolutely right. Like I think we need to highlight that and make it a lot more, you know, make it a lot, you know, add some clarity to that. Like this is the point in the process beyond which, you know, data doesn't proceed past this without having been, you know, scrutinized, understood, and, you know, anonymized where needed, aggregated where needed, things like that. Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense.
And by the way, far be it for me to be an expert on that. When we created the vision for Austin City up years ago and called for something like this, I don't think I put the words explicitly in there about security and privacy either, because I was taking it for granted. Yeah. I'm just seeing that over the last few years, the way cities are responding to this, we have to be super explicit, say it first and last, and probably, Brian, you know this as well as anybody because of what you do. And we have to talk about the merits of sharing data and having access to different data to do things, but that sharing doesn't require sharing personal aspects of it, that many important data analytics studies can be done by sharing anonymized data. But the sharing is good, it's just the protection of certain part, the PHI that has to be done.
Yes.
Great point. I will add that to the presentation so that we don't get any concerns about data privacy and make sure we call that out. One of the other things that I'm seeing right now around data. Sure.
Rob, one last thing, and Raleigh just mentioned it in here. In addition to me bringing up the San Francisco example, I hate to say it, but it'd probably be good to have a little slide after the initial statement about security and privacy and say, so we won't have things like this. And I think that will reassure people, say, oh, okay, so they're going to get into a presentation, but they've said right up front, so we won't have things like facial recognition and the issues with personally identifiable information at traffic lights and whatnot. So that because those are the things that city folks see in the news. So anyway, I just want to say, if we just say up front that those are paramount and we say right after that, so that we won't have issues like this, then I think people will listen to all of this much more open-mindedly.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting areas of focus for cities right now that I'm hearing from many of the cities that I work with is leveraging data to measure digital equity and to measure equity of city services for the different constituents in the city. So measuring equity is a key focus area for many cities across the nation, and understanding we get more requests from District 9. Is that because District 9 is more affluent and because they have access to these tools to report these things? And maybe we don't get as many requests from District 3 because they're less affluent and maybe they don't have the ability to go online and make these reports. So trying to understand equity across the city and city services is a big focus area, and where some cities are starting to look at data to determine how they can approach equity and the equitable delivery of city services. So that's kind of my last point. Not sure where we go from here, but hopefully you guys found this interesting. We'd love to start demonstrating it to various departments in the city. I think the next step would probably be to get a meeting with the 311 team. Jay, let's talk about how we get that done, and then talk with them about how we might help them with the data architecture.
Well, Brad's on the call here. I see him. He works for the city, and he's the one who's been, I think, the interface to the 311 team. I think CTM maybe manages the infrastructure for 311. Is that right, Brad?
Yeah, we do. It's a kind of an unusual arrangement where 311 is actually a department of Austin Energy. And that goes back quite a few years, where this department was the one that had the funds to actually start up a 311 program. But they leveraged CTM as far as providing the hardware, the infrastructure, the tech support, and so forth. And that relationship is still continued today.
So Brad, in terms of trying to get a dialogue with those folks to talk about data architecture and data visualizations and data science, would that be something you could help set up? And should I reach out to you via email?
Yeah, let's talk about that, Rob. I've had several conversations recently, as you know, that, or most of you probably know, we're in the process of procurement on a chatbot assistant, and Responsive is one of the candidates that are in this. And the topic of 311 keeps coming up. And so they've asked me to give a 311 guys again and see what sort of interest they have. And it's going to tie into this conversation as well. Where I've got to be a little cautious is, now that we've got this formal procurement process in place, there's things and some things that I can't do. It kind of gets into this fairness thing where, well, if I have 311 get a demo from one vendor, then I need to make sure that the other competing vendors also have the opportunity to do their presentation as well. I'm not the expert on procurement, so I'm talking to some people to make sure I don't cross any lines. But yeah, let's definitely figure out what you want to do to move forward, and we can send some emails out and get that moving.
Sounds great. Do you know when that procurement process is going to end? Because it might be safer for us just to wait till that completes before we go in. Any idea about how long that's going to take?
Yeah, so kind of unfortunately here, we have to make a decision by July the 15th. And then of course, once that selection has taken place, then we'll go through a whole different type of phase of how to actually get it done. The existing contract with IBM is not, it's all the way through August, I believe. But the way our procurement process works, we had to actually complete our selection process by July 15th, which is really just a few weeks away. So if you want to wait till after that,
let's do it. Yes.
Okay, we can still talk about how we want to approach this and move forward. So if you want to send me an email or something, and we can come up with a strategy what we want to do moving forward, that's great.
Will do. Thank you.
I wanted to introduce someone who's actually new to these tech series, David Sandell, who's here visiting from St. Louis, and came across David by email this week, introduced by Michael Shearer, I think. Was that right, David?
Yeah.
You're on mute, David.
Yeah, Michael. It was Jade. I remember. It was Michael Shearer.
Sorry about that.
No worries. And David, I thought I would give you a quick chance to introduce yourself. I've seen, I think, almost everybody here, maybe everybody here before on previous calls, but you're probably new. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick since we have a few extra minutes?
Yes, thank you, Jay. My name is Dave Sandel. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called iNeighborhoods. We build smart cities for the digital age, one neighborhood at a time. We've been on a very long journey, I'd say over the last 15 years, working on very large scale implementations. And as we went through the large scale implementations, we decided that the smart city model is more effective when it's turned upside down and done on very small scales with a very tight group of stakeholders who are focused on the success of some aspect of smart cities. So we went ahead and developed the platform to actually do this. It runs on the iPhone and Android today. We have a bunch of different mapping functions, crowdsourced cameras and things built into it, but we haven't spread this to the world yet. And since I was originally born in Austin, and then I heard about you guys and Jay, and I thought, my God, these guys have got a great ecosystem down here. So I wanted to meet as many of you as I could at 5 o'clock today and see what you all got going and where your mind space is in this area. And I enjoyed the presentation today, Rob. It really, the original smart city model is this government-centric model. And government will always be part of smart city, but I would think what more people are realizing is the true smart city model is about everyone participating in a digital world. So, I can see your portion representing the government and being a feed, but we would be, have different types of interfaces between what we've done and what you've done to co-represent information to each other and have a better human interface, but together they work all together. So it's great to meet you all. And Rob, thanks for your presentation today.
You're welcome. I'd love to hear more about what you guys are working on in a future session in terms of how that app works and how you're generating that small community model.
So David, I would like to offer that you should speak in the Texas Smart City series here. Today's a small group, but we sometimes have 50, 60 people in this from cities across Texas.
Oh,
and it would be good with enough advance notice, we could probably get the audience size up towards that level for something like this and bring in our colleagues from around the state. So maybe you can give a presentation and this, Jessica can certainly arrange that.
That would be fantastic.
All right. Brian, Rob, Steve, I'm glad you were able to join. Sorry I didn't introduce you at the beginning. I missed you joining. Where are you? You're on here somewhere. There you are. Anything else?
No, just looking for next steps. We now have the architecture. We can now go do great things with it. We just got to find a department in the city that wants to work with us.
Well, so that Jason John Michael, he could, for those of you who don't know Jason John Michael, like Brad, he also works for the city, different department. He is the director for smart mobility in the Austin Transportation Department. He would normally have tried to make this call in today's happy hour, but he had a family emergency that he has to take care of. So he can't be there today, but he's assembling a government cohort. The government cohort will have, it'll be a subset of the participants and potential participants in Austin Smart City Alliance from that government stakeholder group. As a reminder, probably all of you remember this, but we have a handful of stakeholder groups in Austin Smart City Alliance. One stakeholder group is government. They are often the North Stars in terms of what would make lives better and cities better. So they often know what the outcome should be. We have nonprofits as a stakeholder group. They are often deep diving into specific social and civic issues. And so again, they serve more of that role is knowing what the outcome should be, although both of those first two groups participate in solutions as well. We have higher ed. They specialize in the research into techniques that could be used to create solutions. We have private sector, create products, solutions, and services. So they're more on the solution side of the smart city problem as opposed to the problem statement side of it. We have the citizens, we have professional and community associations, and we have the citizens at large. There's 6 stakeholder groups in Austin Smart City Alliance. David, in the past, as I mentioned at the very beginning, one of the reasons that we wanted to have this grand architecture vision is because I saw too many fragmented projects. We also want to have lots of small projects. We just want to have a fabric such that as we're spinning them up, we're thinking downstream, oh, this neat little project with smartphones and taking pictures of neighborhood issues. How would we ultimately save that data on the fabric, on the framework that Brian and Rob have come up with? So we're going to try to come at it from both ends. And so I think your presentation could be very helpful at spinning up the actual projects that get people excited. And then we just want to make sure we have a data architecture that is in the back of our mind, actually in the front of our mind at all times. So we're thinking, how can we capture data from multiple small projects and maybe do some meta projects downstream?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Thanks for bringing that up. And I agree with the philosophy you're putting there. I mean, in a large area region, there's a common denominator of information which needs a repository and governance of its own. It's for everything. But then surrounding all that is a lot of other smaller things which would have APIs which talk to the common repository, but also provide unique forms of information that the common repository would never have access to. So that's kind of the model we see, where there can be a central point with lots of orbiting things around that. We also develop the ability to do digital broadband mapping. So for example, and this is just an example, I could take the city of Austin and map out every broadband connection and 20 different metadata fields for every connection in the entire Austin area. That could go into the regional repository, but then segments of that could go into little neighborhood initiatives which have totally different goals and objectives. So these are the types of things we could do together. And if we found a way to do this, what we would do would leverage what Rob is doing and vice versa. Becomes part of the bigger solution, which includes everyone. And it's not just the government solution, it's a people solution. I think when the people solution arrives, the money is going to arrive.
That works. Let's do it. Let's start today.
Well, one last reminder, by the way, everybody, we have a social event today, a networking event, and I hope many of you can make it. We ended up having like 30 some people at the one at Easy Time. Well, okay, Rob, I know you probably can't make it, but which body of water are you on, the Pacific?
Yes,
Yeah.
San Francisco Bay.
All right, well, doubtful you could get here in time. It's at 5 p.m. Central Time at ABGB. But I hope folks can make it who are local, even if you just make it for a little while. We had about 30 last time, and we collected some inputs on cards, as well as some contact info that Jessica has reached out to them and sent them a message about today's event as well. We'll probably meet some new people again today, people who couldn't make it last time, but that hopefully can make it today. Jessica's preparing a handout that we'll give to folks that sort of give a quick summary of the first 6 projects. So what we're really hoping to do today is meet some people that want to attach to one of those 6 projects and or are inspired by those 6 and have a 7th or 8th project they'd like to bring up. So we really want to ramp up fast out of the gate here as we get this pandemic under control, and super excited about all the projects, but ultimately it's going to take people that are willing to work together to do it. And I hope you'll come out today and have a beer with us and meet somebody else and convince them to do something.
And you forgot, while I don't think he will be there, we will be collectively having a drink in honor of our board member and presenter, Brian Jacobs' birthday today.
Woohoo.
At the happy hour. He may or may not be there, but we will drink in honor of his birthday. So
I
we
will,
invite you to
I will
join
be
us.
there. I may be a little late, but I will be there.
So everybody has to come because it's his birthday, guys.
Jessica, I drink in honor of Brian's birthday 365 days a year. That's how much he means to me.
I feel that. I feel that deeply. So we invite you all to join.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Hope to see you tonight. And if not, have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
So, bye, guys.
Bye.